What if everything you think you know about your own limits is actually false? What if the life you keep imagining isn't sitting there waiting for luck, talent, or someone's approval, but is instead waiting on one quiet shift happening inside your own mind? Most people spend years trying to fix their circumstances instead. They switch up routines. They chase after motivation. They wait around for confidence to show up, but nothing really changes because they never touch the one thing that's shaping their reality every single day, their inner programming. Your mind is always listening, even in moments you think no one's paying attention. Every thought you repeat turns into a direction. Every emotion you repeat turns into a habit. Every habit you repeat turns into an identity. And little by little, without even noticing, people end up living inside patterns they never actually chose for themselves. They start saying things like, "I'm just not good enough. This is simply who I am. Success isn't meant for someone like me. I always end up failing." Then one day they glance around and mistake these old thoughts for solid truth. But here's what nobody bothers to teach you. Your brain was never built to stay frozen in place. It adapts. It reorganizes itself. It keeps learning. It rewrites its own code. Who you are today isn't set in stone. How you think can shift. How you respond can shift. How you view opportunity can shift. The mind that shaped your current life doesn't have to be the same mind that builds your future. You won't transform overnight. Transformation happens through choices made again and again, through focus repeated, through action repeated, one fresh thought, one fresh decision, one fresh standard at a time, and eventually something remarkable takes place. You stop reacting to life and start shaping it instead. You stop waiting for permission and start trusting yourself. You stop merely surviving and start truly becoming. This isn't about pretending everything's flawless. It's about realizing your thoughts function as instructions, and your future is tuned in and listening. Today isn't about gathering more motivation. Today is about rebuilding the operating system running inside your mind, because the moment the mind shifts, everything else shifts with it. If any of this is landing with you, stick around till the end, sit with it, and commit yourself to becoming the strongest version of who you can be. Your life is being built right now, not just by the decisions you make, but by the thoughts you keep repeating. Most people believe that change starts with action, but action actually starts somewhere much deeper than that. Before any result, before any habit, before any success or any failure, there's a pattern of thinking that gets repeated so often it begins to feel completely natural. The mind learns through repetition, plain and simple. When a thought shows up once, it just passes through. But when that same thought shows up again and again, your mind starts treating it as something important. Eventually, it feels familiar. And whatever becomes familiar starts shaping your emotions, your expectations, your confidence, and how you behave. Think about how many people wake up each morning already bracing for disappointment. Before the day even begins, they're quietly telling themselves things like, "Nothing ever works out for me. I'm just not talented enough." Or, "People like me never catch a break." They might never say these words out loud, but that repetition is happening inside them constantly. Then something powerful kicks in. The mind starts hunting for evidence to back it up. Suddenly, every setback feels like confirmation. Every delay feels like it's personal. Every obstacle feels permanent. Not because reality actually shifted, but because their attention did. Your repeated thoughts become instructions. This is exactly why two people can face the same exact situation and walk away with completely different outcomes. One person sees rejection and gives up. The other sees feedback and keeps growing. One person sees difficulty and pulls back. The other sees a challenge and builds strength from it. The difference usually starts with what they keep telling themselves over and over. None of this means you should ignore real problems or pretend life is simple. It means refusing to let negative repetition harden into your identity. Instead of repeating your limitations, start repeating possibility. Swap out, "I can't do this," for "I can learn this." Swap, "I always fail," for "I get better every single time." Swap, "Nothing ever changes," for "Every action I take moves me forward." At first, this will feel a little strange. That's completely normal. Anything unfamiliar feels awkward before it becomes a true part of you. Your mind doesn't just believe a new thought the moment you think it, it accepts whatever gets repeated with consistency. So choose your inner words carefully. Guard what earns your attention. Be deliberate about what you watch, what you listen to, what you take in, and what you mentally rehearse. Because your thoughts aren't just background noise floating around. They're rehearsal. And sooner or later, your life starts performing whatever your mind has rehearsed the most. One of the biggest reasons people stay stuck isn't a lack of ability. It's that they remain loyal to an old version of themselves that no longer fits who they're becoming. People often carry around outdated identities for years without even realizing it. They introduce themselves through old failures. They define themselves by past mistakes. They build their future using memories that were never supposed to become permanent fixtures. Maybe there was a moment when something didn't go right. Maybe someone doubted them. Maybe they tried once and it didn't work out. And slowly, without them even noticing, a sentence formed somewhere in their mind. This is simply who I am. That sentence turns dangerous fast because the moment identity locks into place, effort quietly starts to fade away. People stop trying new things because they assume they already know how it'll end. They stop growing because they figure growth is meant for someone else. They stop imagining a bigger life because they assume their story's already been written. But your past was never meant to define you. Your past is just information, it's experience, it's feedback. It was never your identity. Think it through. The person you were 5 years ago doesn't think the exact same way you think right now. Your opinions have shifted, your understanding has shifted, your priorities have shifted. So why would you assume the version of yourself standing here today is the final one? Growth begins the moment you stop asking, who have I been? And start asking instead, who am I becoming? Every real transformation starts with permission. Permission to drop old labels. Permission to stop dragging around outdated beliefs. Permission to stop introducing yourself as the person who always gives up, always overthinks everything, always plays it small, or always stays safe. Because identity follows the evidence you give it. Every time you act differently, you create fresh evidence. Every disciplined day becomes proof. Every hard conversation becomes proof. Every promise you actually keep becomes proof. Every challenge you face head on becomes proof. Slowly, your mind starts rewriting the story it tells about you. You stop saying, I'm trying to become confident, and start saying, I'm becoming someone who trusts themselves. You stop saying, I hope I become disciplined one day, and start saying, I am building discipline right now, every single day. Transformation rarely arrives dramatically. Most of the time it happens quietly, one decision, one action, one repeated choice at a time. You don't wake up one morning as a completely different person. You become different because you stop defending the limits of your old self and start creating evidence for the person you actually want to become. Your future doesn't need permission from your past. Most people go through life believing their emotions are instructions to be obeyed. If they feel afraid, they assume it means stop. If they feel uncertain, they assume it means they aren't ready. If they feel discouraged, they assume it means they're failing. But emotions were never built to steer your direction. They were built to inform you, nothing more. Emotions are signals, not commands. They show up to communicate something happening inside you, but they don't always paint an accurate picture of reality. Fear doesn't always mean real danger. Doubt doesn't always mean you're incapable. Discomfort doesn't always mean you're headed down the wrong path. Sometimes discomfort simply means you're growing. Think back to the moments that actually changed your life. Learning something new felt uncomfortable. Speaking up felt uncomfortable. Starting over felt uncomfortable. Trying again after a failure felt uncomfortable. And yet those very moments often became the starting point of real transformation. The issue was never the emotions themselves. The issue begins the moment people hand over their decision-making power to feelings that are only temporary. One rough day becomes an excuse to quit. One moment of fear becomes a reason to stay invisible. One wave of uncertainty becomes a reason to give up on your goals. And over time, emotions start designing a life you never actually chose on purpose. But mastering your emotions starts with responding differently. Instead of reacting right away, pause and observe. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? What is this emotion actually trying to show me? Create some space between the emotion and the action you take. That small gap changes everything, because when you observe your emotions instead of obeying them, you gain real freedom. You realize fear can exist while you keep moving forward anyway. You realize confidence isn't a requirement for taking action. Action often creates confidence instead. You realize anxiety doesn't actually predict what will happen. You realize motivation is unreliable, but commitment is powerful. Strong people aren't people who never feel emotion. They feel things deeply, but they refuse to hand over control. They understand that feelings rise and fall while values stay steady. So when fear shows up, they keep going. When doubt shows up, they adjust and keep going. When frustration shows up, they learn from it and keep going. They trust their decisions more than their moods, and something remarkable starts to happen. The emotions that used to control them start losing their grip. Not because the emotions vanish, but because awareness grows stronger. You stop asking, how do I stop feeling fear altogether? And start asking instead, how do I keep moving forward even when fear shows up? Because your emotions might speak loudly, but they don't have to be the ones writing your future. You can listen without obeying, you can feel without giving up control, and you can move forward before you feel 100% ready. Your attention is one of the most powerful forces you have in life. Yet most people give it away without realizing the true cost. Every single day, countless things compete for your focus. Opinions, notifications, problems, comparisons, distractions, noise. And slowly your attention gets pulled in so many directions that people forget they're the ones who get to choose where their energy goes. But attention is never neutral. Whatever you keep focusing on grows stronger inside your mind. If you constantly focus on what's missing, your mind trains itself to notice lack. If you only focus on problems, your mind gets skilled at finding even more problems. If you focus on criticism, fear, and doubt, eventually those emotions start shaping your decisions for you. Your attention becomes the filter through which you see reality. Two people can stand in the exact same spot and experience completely different worlds simply because they've trained their attention differently. One notices opportunity, the other notices obstacles. One notices progress, the other notices flaws. One notices possibility, the other notices limitation. The difference isn't always intelligence or talent. Often it's simply focus. Most people believe success comes from doing more, but a lot of the time, growth actually begins by paying attention to fewer things. Attention works like a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows stronger wherever you train it. If your attention constantly jumps from one distraction to the next, deep thinking becomes hard to reach. If your attention is trained with real intention, clarity starts to show up. That means protecting your mornings, protecting your surroundings, protecting whatever enters your mind. Not everything deserves a reaction from you. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Not every distraction deserves access to your goals. You don't need to consume everything just to feel informed. You don't need to respond to everything just to prove you matter. Sometimes progress is built through choosing what to focus on and what to leave out. Ask yourself, what am I feeding my attention every single day? What conversations are shaping how I think? What habits are directing my energy? Because attention never just disappears. It gets invested somewhere. And wherever your attention goes, your future quietly follows right behind it. Start giving more attention to growth than to fear. More attention to learning than to comparison. More attention to solutions than to excuses. More attention to action than to outcomes. At first, these shifts might feel invisible, but over time, your mind starts adapting, your decisions get better, your confidence builds, your direction becomes clearer, and one day you notice something powerful. The things that used to distract you no longer have power over you because your attention isn't being pulled around anymore. It's being directed on purpose. And once attention becomes intentional, transformation stops feeling random and starts feeling inevitable. People often wait around for some dramatic moment to change their lives. They pictured transformation showing up as one powerful decision, one burst of motivation, one perfect opportunity that suddenly flips everything. But real change rarely announces itself like that. Most extraordinary results actually begin in ordinary, unremarkable moments. A decision nobody else even notices, a habit nobody claps for, a choice so small it seems meaningless at the time. And yet these tiny moments carry enormous weight because your life isn't built from rare dramatic events. It's built from actions repeated over and over. Every day you're sending signals to your own mind. When you keep the promises you make to yourself, your mind takes note. When you avoid the hard tasks, your mind takes note of that too. When you show discipline, even when nobody's watching, your mind notices. Every single action becomes evidence. People often underestimate just how quickly small decisions shape identity. Reading a few pages doesn't seem life-changing in the moment. Practicing for 20 minutes doesn't feel extraordinary. Choosing patience just once doesn't feel dramatic at all, but repetition builds momentum, and momentum builds transformation. Most people don't fail because their goals are impossible. They fail because they expect instant results from actions that actually require consistency over time. They get discouraged because they can't see visible progress yet. But growth often happens beneath the surface, long before any results show up. Think about a tree. For a long stretch of time, nothing seems to be happening above the ground, yet the roots are quietly spreading out where nobody can see them. Your habits work exactly the same way. Every disciplined action strengthens something invisible before it ever becomes visible. This is why consistency matters far more than intensity. Anyone can feel motivated for a single day. Anyone can act with energy for a week. But repeated action builds something far stronger than motivation ever could. It builds trust in yourself, and self-trust changes absolutely everything. Because once your mind starts believing that you actually follow through, resistance starts losing its grip. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop waiting around to feel ready. You become someone who simply acts, not perfectly, not dramatically, just consistently. Never underestimate small decisions. Choosing to start matters. Choosing to keep going matters. Choosing to come back after a setback matters. One healthy choice, one focused hour, one finished task, one hard conversation. These moments look small on their own, but together they build identity, and identity shapes destiny. Your future isn't only being created by your biggest decisions. It's quietly built through the small choices you repeat day after day. Every action is a vote. Every choice sends a message. And your mind is always listening more closely to what you do than to what you say. There comes a point in life when something clicks and changes everything. Nobody else is coming to design your future for you. Not circumstances, not luck, not timing, not anyone else's approval. At some point, you realize that if your life is going to look different, you're the one who has to become intentional about building it. Most people live on autopilot. They react instead of creating. They wait instead of deciding. They hope instead of designing anything. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into years. And eventually they wonder why their life feels so disconnected from the dreams they once carried. But reality starts shifting the moment you stop acting like a passenger and start becoming the architect instead. An architect doesn't start with random actions. An architect starts with a vision. They decide what they want to build before they ever lay down the foundation. Your life works exactly the same way. If you don't set your own standards, your circumstances will set them for you. If you don't direct your own thoughts, distractions will direct them instead. If you don't define your priorities, urgency will push purpose right out of the way. This is why living with intention matters so much. Not because every single day will be perfect, but because direction matters far more than speed. You don't need every answer figured out. You just need to know what kind of person you're becoming. Ask yourself, what values are going to guide me? What habits are going to support me? What standards will I refuse to ever lower? Because your standards shape your decisions, and your decisions shape your outcomes. People often assume confidence shows up first. But confidence usually gets created afterward. It grows every time you act in a way that lines up with who you're trying to become. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes proof. Every hard choice builds real strength. Every moment of discipline becomes part of your foundation. And little by little, your life stops feeling random. You become less reactive, less dependent on other people's opinions, less controlled by feelings that are only passing through. You start making decisions driven by vision instead of fear. That doesn't mean obstacles just disappear. Architects don't stop building the moment the weather turns bad. They adjust and keep going anyway. Your setbacks don't erase your blueprint. Your mistakes don't destroy your future. They simply become part of the building process. The moment you stop asking life what it's going to give you and start asking yourself what you're going to create, everything begins to shift. You stop waiting around for the perfect moment. You start creating momentum instead. You stop hoping things will change. You become the actual source of that change, because your mind was never meant to be a prison built from old patterns. It was meant to be the place where your future gets designed, and every thought, every action, every standard becomes one more brick in what you're building.